All right, let's go back on the record. We'll have Mr. El Shami, I think, which were you calling?
Sam El Chami, Your Honor.
Mr. El Shami, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Let's proceed.
Thank you. Mr. El Chami, do you recall that I took your deposition on May 24th, 2021?
Yes, sir.
And did I ask you, and did you give the following testimony? The question was, and you agree, do you not, Mr. El Chami, that in paragraph 1, it does not say Versailles and/or Assigns will purchase the property. And your answer was, it's all in option 1. Option 1 is 7 sentences, 7 -- deals that says that Versailles will purchase, agreement by the Zatoons, execution of general warranty deed, general mutual release, dismissal of a pending appeal, agreement of the -- this is all in option 1. It has all of these components in it.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm not entirely sure what Mr. Scott is doing. Is he impeaching the witness? What exactly is the question?
I'm merely asking him whether or not he gave that testimony in his
Sustained. It's a proper impeachment.
Let me do it this way. Can I share a screen, Your Honor?
You may.
You know what, let me try it this way. Mr. El Chami, at the time that your lawyer made the statutory buyback offer, who was the contractor of the property at 2808 Maple Springs?
Objection. Vague, ambiguous. I don't know what the term contractor means in connection to the question.
Overruled, you can answer.
Versailles Dallas was.
Okay. And at any point in time, was Kenneth Lambert involved in the construction of the Zatoons property at 2808 Maple Springs?
No, sir.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No.
Okay.
No, he was not.
And Mr. El Chami, you're aware, are you not, that at the time that this settlement offer was made, that 2808 Maple Springs LLC had not even been formed as an entity in the state of Texas?
Yes, I'm aware.
You said you are aware?
Yes.
Okay. And so at the time that you made the settlement offer to the Zatoons on January 5th for Versailles to buy back the property, 2808 Maple Springs was not in any way involved, were they?
No.
Okay. And at the time that the Zatoons accepted the settlement offer on January 22nd, 2021, isn't it a fact that 2808 Maple Springs still had not been created as an entity in the state of Texas?
It hasn't been created as an entity, but there have been conversations about the buyback.
Move to strike the last part as unresponsive.
Overruled.
So, Mr. El Chami, isn't it a fact that 2808 Maple Springs was not formed as an entity in the state of Texas until around February 24th or 25th, 2021?
Correct.
And that was done, Mr. El Chami, after you received, through your counsel, my February 22nd, 2021 letter in which we indicated that the Zatoons had already performed under the buyback agreement and had tendered their performance early.
I don't know the dates of what you sent. You can show it to me. I'll be more than happy to answer you correctly.
Okay. Do you have any reason, as you sit here right now, to quarrel with my representation that 2808 Maple Springs was formed after you were advised that the Zatoons had tendered their performance with the title company?
I'm not disputing that, no.
Okay. And Mr. El-Chami, at the time that the settlement offer was made for Versailles to purchase the Zatoun's property as the contractor for $1.3 million, did Versailles Dallas have the funds in order to honor that buyback agreement?
First, I did not personally have it, but we had been in conversations with the parties that were gonna take it over.
And who were the parties that were going to take it over
I have been
that you're referring
I've
to?
been in conversation with my brother since before we even made the offer. That the understanding that there could be an offer, and if he was in position to be able to step in and help.
And so did your brother at that time make a firm commitment to help in any particular degree? Yes or no?
Yes,
And what amount of money did your brother commit that he would provide to Versailles to help with the purchase of the repurchase of the Zatoun's property?
he said that if the deal made sense, real estate wise, he would be more than glad to step in and help.
And so and when did you have that conversation with your brother in relation to the buyback offer dated January 5th, 2021?
We had been talking about it for a while. He knew the lawsuit that's been going on, and he knows what we were going through. So we had open conversations about that.
So at what point, if at all, did your brother make a firm commitment to provide Versailles with a certain amount of funding or money in order to complete this buyback?
When I showed him the buyback agreement.
And when was that, Mr. El-Chami?
I think when we made the settlement, the repurchase offer.
Okay. And how much money did your brother agree to provide to Versailles Dallas to buy back the Zatoun's property at 2808 Maple Springs?
He was going to buy it as a real estate investment. So I was supposed to pay him back the $200,000 that I bought it from him, and he was going to take over the $1.1 million as a real estate play for himself.
Okay, so Mr. El-Chami, if I understand correctly, did your brother at any point prior to March 8th, 2021, make a commitment in which he would loan or provide Versailles Dallas with $1.3 million total in which to complete the buyback of the Zatoun's property at 2808 Maple Springs?
He wasn't going to loan Versailles the money. He was going to buy it himself. And him and Lambert, they formed a company, and Lambert's going to be the manager of the company, and they were going to take it over at 2808 Maple Springs LLC.
And so did your brother tell you or confirm that he determined that this, at $1.3 million, the acquisition of the Zatoun's property was a good real estate investment?
To my knowledge and to his expertise, yes, it made sense to them.
Okay. And did he tell you, or did you feel that he could make money even paying $1.3 million for the Zatoun's property by redeveloping it?
There was conversation about that he could take over, fix the house on lots 3 and part of 4, and then keep lots 1 and 2 as a real estate play. And
so the money that was going to come from this party that you called the investor, was that Mr. Lambert's money, or was that your brother's money that was going to be used to fund this buyback?
It's an LLC they formed. I have no idea how they come up with the money, or who brought it, or who put it in. I know I was not involved in it.
Well, let me ask you this. What was your understanding from your discussions with your brother as to whether or not the money was coming out of either his company or funds that he had in his possession or control?
We didn't have that discussion.
Did he tell you at any point prior to March 8th that he was buying the property?
Prior to March 8th, of course.
Okay. And when did your brother tell you that he was going to go forward and buy the property of the Zatoun?
All along.
And so can you tell us if there's any point in time in which either you or your attorney prior to March 8th let us know that you had made an arrangement with your brother to fund the repurchase of the property from the Zatoons?
The contract, the offer to purchase clearly indicated Versailles and or assigns, and we had the option to assign the contract.
And so in paragraph 1 of the offer that you're talking about, the one from your attorney dated January 5th, isn't it a fact that it specifically said that Versailles will purchase the property from the Zatoons, free and clear of liens? Yes or no?
It's paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's all one connected offer to purchase. So,
Mr. El-Chami, I'm merely asking you at this point for an answer as to whether or not under paragraph 1, the buyer who agreed to purchase the property was Versailles, the contractor of 2808 Maple Springs for my clients.
yes,
Okay. And isn't it a fact, sir, that at no point from January 5th to March 8th did Versailles Dallas send any money to Trinity Title for the remaining balance of $1.1 million?
we were not supposed to.
I didn't ask that. I'm asking, I'll ask it again. Can you tell me, do you acknowledge that at no point did Versailles Dallas wire money to Trinity Title for the $1.1 million remaining balance under the January 5th settlement agreement?
We did not.
Okay. And at any point after March 8th, has Versailles Dallas or you and your son, Sam and Dylan El-Chami, wired any funds to Trinity Title to fund the repurchase of the Zatoons property?
We had secured the money through Maple Springs LLC, and on March 8th, they were willing, ready, and able to close, and the money was there and ready to be wired to the title company, Mr. Scott.
And so I asked you about this in your deposition. The offer that you're telling us that was made by 2808 Maple Springs to acquire the Zatoons property, that was an oral offer, is that correct?
Pardon me, would you kindly repeat that question again?
Sure. When 2808 or your brother, Mr. Lambert, or your brother Casey El-Chami told you that they would purchase the Zatoons property, that offer from 2808 was not a written offer. Their offer was an oral offer that you discussed with them, correct?
I had no reason to doubt that they were proceeding, and I know behind the screens they were getting everything ready. They started 2808 Maple Springs LLC and deposited money in it, and they got their ducks in a row, and they were ready to go, Mr. Scott.
Okay, but Mr. El-Chami, I asked a different question. It's very simple. The 2808 Maple Springs, whatever offer they made to Versailles or to you to purchase the property, was an oral agreement. It's just something you discuss with them. It's not something that you put in a formal sale agreement or contract, correct?
Yeah, it was understood. I'll reassign my contract. Yes.
But it was an oral agreement.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Okay. And 2808 only kept their money in place for less than 2 weeks. Is that correct?
I have no reason to doubt that, but I know that it was there and ready to go 100% the day of closing.
And
How
so
long they kept it, how long, I don't know.
And so, Mr. El-Chami, was there anything that you did to lock them in so that legally or contractually they were required to keep that money in place for this transaction for any particular period of time?
All I know is that the funds were there. few days prior to closing, they were ready, and then probably a few days after the March 8th.
So is it your testimony, Mr. El-Chami, that the money was in place on March 8th, perhaps a few days before, and at most a few days after?
Was it ready on March 8th? Yes, sir.
And how long was that? If we talk about March 8th, what was the total amount of time that 2808 had money in their account to, as you say, ready, willing, and able to complete this transaction?
They had the money in there past the 8th, I'm sure, 11, 12, 13, and then they decided that the deal is not going through, and you all were not reassigning the contract. You're not agreeing to anything, so they probably just went away.
And
I don't know
so,
when they pulled the money out, the exact date, if that's what you want me to answer.
and so was your brother, Casey, involved in those decisions for 2808 Maple Springs to walk away?
2808 Maple Springs is managed by Ken Lambert. He was designated the manager of that entity, and he would have the ultimate decision.
Do you know whether or not well, let me withdraw that. Isn't it a fact that Mr. El-Chami, that the money that was put into 2808 was borrowed from another entity, CCCM Investments?
Mr. Scott, you can direct this. I have no knowledge 100%, but I'm sure Mr. Lambert would have that answer for you, or unless you know.
Well, do you know whether or not Mr. Lambert was investing his own funds in capitalizing 2808 in order to complete this transaction, as you claim?
I have no exact knowledge.
Do you know whether or not during the period from March 8th through March 12th, there were any conversations with your brother with regard to whether or not to move forward with a transaction involving the property at 2808 Maple Springs?
I talked to Lambert a couple of times. I did not discuss it with my brother, no.
Are you telling the court that even though your brother, according to your testimony, told you that he was going to fund or finance the acquisition of this property as an investment, that in or about the date for closing, March 8th, you didn't have any discussions with your brother concerning that?
We speak almost every day, but at that point, after March 8th, we thought that the deal was dead and you all didn't want to come to the table.
And so, Mr. El-Chami, in that regard—
Matter of fact, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. El-Chami.
As a matter of fact, they tried to close the deal a few days after. They sent emails to Lori, to the title company. We're ready and able. On the 8th, they sent an email saying, hey, if we don't close within the next 30 minutes, we won't be able to fund till tomorrow. Please send us a hot statement. Send us all the information we need so we can move forward. They've done that week before and few days even after.
And Mr. El-Chami,
especially on the day off, Mr. Scott.
And Mr. El-Chami, didn't you acknowledge in your deposition that whatever 2808 Maple Springs was doing with the title company and whatever you were doing with the title company within the couple of days before March 8th, that was not shared with us or was not shared with the Zatoons?
I think everything was on the table, Mr. Scott. There was nothing. We were not trying to hide anything. Everything was. You were probably copied on most of the stuff that went to the title company. Lori, Chris, and Angela, and Mr. Ed, Miss Pettit, David. Everybody was. Everything that was on up and up. Everything was on the table in black and white.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and break for today. I'm going to have a brief meeting with council and virtual judges chambers, which I just created. I'm going to assign you to that. It's going to be a breakout room, and then we will see everyone else tomorrow morning. Rhonda has the new link if she hasn't sent it to you yet, and we'll